Welcome and thank you for joining us for this January 27th episode of Live at the League. I'm Emily Kalashevsky, the Assistant Director for Member Experience and Learning here at the League. I'm your host. Before we get into it, we do have a few housekeeping announcements as always. If you have questions for our guests or our Lansing team, please post those in the chat, Q&A, or in the comments on the Facebook feed, and we will answer them as best we can. In addition, if we are referencing any links, websites throughout the show, we will be sure to post those in the chat, either here in Zoom or on Facebook, so that you can click on those and get to whatever it is that we're referencing. Let's get into it because we have some special guests with us here today, an extra special guest. I am pleased to welcome Melissa Milton-Pung, who is here to walk us through the My Funding Hub Grant Basics Toolkit. It is an excellent resource for communities looking to learn more about seeking and managing grants. Melissa, one of our esteemed colleagues, thank you and welcome to Live at the League. Could you start us off by giving us an overview of what the Grant Basics Toolkit is and why it was created?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. I work in policy research labs here for the League, and one of our big charges is to create solutions for our members. Now, many of our members have probably already heard about the My Funding Hub, but for those of us who have not heard about it, it's a joint venture between the League and the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, LEO. We aggregate grant opportunities and support grant seekers through our help desk, newsletters, webinars, but really we also create how-to kits. So this is the most recent thing that we've created, which is our Grant Basics Toolkit.
Excellent.
I think you had some questions that we need to touch on. Did you want to go through them or do you want me to continue discussing?
I actually want to just give you a quick plug because let's talk about My Funding Hub for just a moment. I mean, this was a lift to create it and get it out there. And from my understanding, this really is a first of its kind. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to drop a link in the chat there because if you're like me, you like to go scrolling around while somebody's talking about it. So what we did is we created this hub that aggregates different grant opportunities from a lot of different sources. When I worked in local government, I was on certain listservs and I looked in certain places that I learned over time from other colleagues. But if you're new to something, or even if you already know what you're doing, maybe you don't know about different opportunities that are still being created. So we pull down from federal sources as well as we have direct contacts with all of state agencies to bring in different grant opportunities. What we then do is we put it into this database that helps you more efficiently look for grant opportunities that will fit certain criteria that you're looking for. Are you a smaller municipality? Are you looking for something specific like infrastructure and water support? We can help you filter through that. And when I say we can help you, meaning you can just go online and you don't have to have any human interaction. However, if you'd like to have human interaction, and I think many of us do, you can reach out to our help desk. And the folks behind the help desk literally have more than hundreds of years of experience because there's a lot of different experienced professionals who then feed into the resources behind the help desk.
Right. And in talking to members about this, one of the things that I'll know, and I'm sure is a pain point when you were working in local government yourself, is that before you would have to sort of piecemeal it, right? Like search for a grant opportunity here, look over there. And what is so revolutionary, maybe it shouldn't be, but what is revolutionary about My Funding Hub is that this is the one-stop shop. You as a local government official do not have to go to multiple websites to try to glean this information. We've put it in one place for you, which I think is so useful when we think about capacity for a lot of our members. So I know we talked, it's about grants, but what types of grants or funding opportunities does this toolkit, the Grant Basics Toolkit, help local governments explore?
I think that it can help you. Well, are you talking about the toolkit itself?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that our aim here was to help you get your mind organized on how are you going to attack the grant opportunity. And if it's going to be a singular opportunity or if it's just getting yourself organized so that you can then search for grants that will match up with what you're searching for. Regardless of which method you're going to use, pretty much any public or private grant is going to require very similar types of basic information. So we created the grant toolkit so that you can pull together these pieces and not have them in a whole bunch of disparate locations. If you're working by yourself, it's a great self-organization tool. If you're working with a grant team, though, you'll have a singular document that you can fold things into, and that will help you be able to not duplicate effort and be able to use something that someone else has already built in your team.
We love that. We love efficiencies.
Yeah,
So Melissa, can you give us a sneak peek? What can you show us? I know we dropped the link in the chat, but you're also going to give us a little demo here today.
for sure. So I know that this can be overwhelming and stressful to begin doing grant searches. When I first started working in local government, literally 20 years ago, I walked in the door and people said, "Oh, we're so glad you're here. That grant's due in 4 days. Do it." It's not an exaggeration that happened. Thankfully,
Mhm.
I had a couple of people who could work with me and we got it out. That's where we started when we were trying to figure out how to put this together. But if you're managing a whole bunch of different stuff at once, you need to be able to figure out what is the best way to know what your organization already knew, pull it together, and then be able to add to it. And so let me share my screen and show you what we put together that will allow you to pull this down. All right, so this is my funding hub. Welcome. You can go directly to the database, or you can look at the different resources that are able to be accessed here. We've got a lot of different items in the resource library. We've got a lot of FAQs. We've got a grant glossary. If you don't know what a NOFA is, which maybe you don't, pull it down here in the grant glossary. But what we're going to look at right now is the Grant Basics Toolkit. This allows us to put all of your different resources in one location. We've got the How to Grant Guide. And if you click on here and see the grant guide, it's going to say, "Hey, welcome. We're going to walk you through all of the steps." This is a PDF that you can pull down. We wrote it assuming that you don't know anything about grant writing, all the way through to evaluating grant outcomes and getting done with the post-award. All of these different components, if you are a subscriber to the My Funding Hub newsletter, you've seen bits and pieces of this over the past several months because every month we put a little chunk in there. But all of this is aggregated into this one document of the How to Grant Guide. The other items that are available here are the budget template, the narrative template, the checklist template, and the reporting template. Let's look through this. The budget template is an editable budget template. We don't have you just start with a blank, paralyzing Excel spreadsheet. You can pull it down and realize that we did this for you in Excel, and it already has all of the formulas as well. So it helps you be able to figure out what are your grant components going to be. And the grant guide helps you understand that as well.
I love that. So useful.
Yeah. And the thing is, we know that this isn't going to be exactly what your grant that you're going to be seeking budget requirements are going to be, but it helps you begin to play with that grant budget. And you're probably, if you're looking for one specific project that you're trying to fund, you're probably looking for multiple different grants for it. So this
Sure.
allows you to have one location and then be able to put it into whatever format is required.
Right. And this feels less overwhelming than starting from complete scratch, right? I think budget alone, having a template is incredibly useful as you're thinking about tackling all that's required for a grant. But this in particular is incredibly useful.
Yeah. So that's the budget template. The narrative template allows you to begin to work on your language. This it acknowledges that those requirements may vary, but they will most likely ask for the same basic contents. You need to explain your need. You need to explain what the potential impact is going to be. You need to be able to explain why is this going to be important. Get your storytelling going. So that's what we have here in the narrative template. And all of this you see it's in box folder. This is an editable, downloadable version that we make sure is available for you. So you can pull this down, you can start jamming on this and say you have a really good idea about what the program description is going to be, but your colleague can really better articulate what is that statement of need, you can both work on the same document and be able to pull it back together when you need to actually fill out the formal grant application.
Excellent.
The checklist template is a way of self-management, because if you are trying to meet a deadline and you're feeling kind of nervous and you're like, oh, I'm gonna forget this, I don't want to forget this, you can customize this checklist to make sure that you have all the different components that you need to not forget how to cross that T and dot that I. Maybe the grant that you're going for is going to require all of this. Maybe it won't. So you can delete or add in any line that is going to be necessary for you to feel like you've punch listed yourself through to confident submission on time. The final component is the reporting template, because, and we've all learned that good reporting starts at the beginning of the grant project, not at the end. So you're going to use this spreadsheet to collect your data all the way through the project. And what you're going to do is make it so many different small bite-sized chunks that by the time you get to the end, when you have to do your reporting, both in narrative form and in numeric form, it's not going to be that hard.
Love that so much.
So that's the whole thing that we've put together for everyone.
That looks great. I'm giving you a round of applause as a colleague, and also on behalf of all of our members who are, I'm sure, ready to use this and put it to work in their own communities. I think that is incredible. So nice work, Melissa and team from the Policy Research Lab.
Thank you.
So if I am a member, if I'm a community and I'm just getting started, is there anything you especially want to point out or reiterate to make sure members know as they are tackling some of the tools or opportunities that we've got out there through My Funding Hub and this toolkit?
Sure. There's a couple of key points. One, you are likely not starting from scratch, because there's likely some existing knowledge in your municipality. Somebody's probably done a grant before. It may be in paper form and you have to go look at it in some file folder, but there's probably somebody who has already done this. So you can maybe understand what has been successful and what has not been successful. But don't get paralyzed and worry too much about whether or not you're doing this right. One of the things that is most important is to not let perfect be the enemy of good. So getting that out there is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else before we close out this segment today, Melissa?
Yeah, for sure. Every month we have a webinar, and it focuses on emerging emerging funding opportunities. And so I'm going to drop in the chat there the sign up for our webinars for My Funding Hub. Additionally, if you want to know about other emerging content that's happening for My Funding Hub, sign up for our newsletter. So I'm going to drop that in there as well. Our next webinar is going to be on February 27th, and I hope that you will be with us. If you can't, they're always going to be posted on the website under past events.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. And I'll give a quick plug. If you're attending those and you are a participant in our Elected Officials Academy, those count for elective credits too. So a nice opportunity for you if you are interested. One quick question we've had come in through the chat, Melissa, is there a read-only option so people can look but not touch a community's grant status, but not wreck it or change anything?
I think that these are just templates that you can pull down. You don't have to worry about mussing it up for somebody else, because when you pull down a copy, it's your copy. You're not going to be working in the same space as someone else who's making those edits.
Excellent. Thanks, Melissa. We appreciate it. The Grant Basics Toolkit available online. We've linked it in the chat. So please take advantage of it. And I know Melissa and all of our colleagues in the Policy Research Labs team and in the help desk are happy to help with anything that comes up. So be sure to take advantage of that. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, lots to talk about as it comes to state and federal affairs. We've got a handful of our team members with us today to talk about some recent updates. First, I'd like to welcome Harrisana Richards to discuss the recent ground emergency medical transportation bill signing, which is an important development for local governments involved in emergency services and a huge win. So, Harrisana, tell us a little bit about the GEMT bill and why it's significant for us.
Yes, happy to, Emily. So we have formerly known as House Bill 5695, which is now Public Act 275 of 2024. Earlier this week, we were fortunate enough to have Governor Whitmer sign the bill into law. And so that ends a long period of time in which we have been advocating to bring this policy forward. Before we even introduced legislation, we've been working with our members since about 2021 after the pandemic to get this program implemented here in Michigan. So it's been a long time coming and a really cool experience to see something from start to finish, which surprisingly rarely happens in this work. But nonetheless, we are excited. As we've talked about on Live the League for months, we have had many member communities advocate for this, raise awareness on the ground emergency medical transportation program. And just a quick 101, what this is that this is a program that is administered by the federal government that would allow for public agencies, local governments that provide emergency medical transportation services to collect 100% of the allowable reimbursement provided to the transportation of Medicaid enrollees. So this is huge, especially looking at a state that we are 8th in the nation of the number of our enrollees in Medicaid right now, a number that is likely to grow as our population changes and hopefully grows. And so recognizing that this has been a huge undertaking on local agencies as they're spread around the state, considering concerns around capacity, hiring, staffing, resourcing, all of that coming down to funding. And so with GEMT, our hope is that with the state's participation in this federal program, we are able to alleviate a little bit of the financial stresses that our public agencies have to endure day in and day out by giving them funding back that they can reinvest in other things throughout their community. So as we've been talking about this for our members, the return varies, but we can see upwards of millions of dollars, even up to $80 million annually come into this state to go right back to local communities. So that's significant and it's really huge. And I would be remiss to not thank our members, especially our members who are in the fire service, for their advocacy and for their support on this, and really explaining to stakeholders and lawmakers alike how important this would be for local communities, and how even though it is supportive of a portion of our membership and how they provide services to our residents, it's still significant enough for the betterment of our whole state. So we're really excited about that.
Absolutely. We love a win. We love a win. Is there a timeline or next steps that municipalities need to be aware of with this, Harrisana?
Yes. So I think right now is the time where member communities can look at their own operations and identify, now that since it is law, how they would like to participate, if they would like to participate. I will note that one of the changes that we made in the House was a requirement that it must be 2 or more eligible agencies must submit a cost report that is, appropriately compiled and provide that to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, because they are the agency that will administrate this. They also are going to provide the methodology for local providers to utilize for their participation. So we as the league, we're going to be involved in this every step of the way. I think another thing that's out on the table is, what does ongoing funding look like, which is a budget conversation, which we'll happily engage in this spring. But what our member communities can do right now is just, understand the structure of their environment, set up their cost reports, make sure that reporting is all set. We are working with membership to identify, who are the champions and the leaders in this. And so we can help, share knowledge and also help other agencies prepare for this as they're going. But yeah, I think part of the timeline is on us. So if we have 2 communities that are available and ready to go, they can initiate the process, and then MDHHS would follow suit and prepare administration of the programming. But then again, it is voluntary. So if your community is not ready right away, take the time and prepare. And next year, or maybe the year after, if it's appropriate for you, you can opt in. There's no penalty to not participate. You don't miss out on anything if you're not doing it right away. But it's going to be really important for us, to work in partnership with the department to identify what's needed from local communities as it comes to reporting, which has historically been a challenge. But again, the league is going to be right there every step of the way in those conversations. So there's still a lot to do, but right now it's going to start with some internal homework.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your leadership on that issue in particular. On behalf of our members, Harrisana, I am now excited to turn to Dave Hodgkins, another member of our state and federal affairs team, to update us on some notable House activity We've already got some questions in the chat on this one. House Bill 4001 and 4002. Dave, can you briefly start us off by summarizing what those two bills are about?
Yeah, sure. So from a high level, 4001 pertains to the minimum wage hike, and then 4002 pertains to the Earned Sick Time Act. So the minimum wage hike bill would retain the tipped minimum wage at 38%, and then it would have a gradual increase in the actual statewide minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2028. And then starting in 2029, it would include some inflationary adjustments into that as well. For the earned sick time legislation, 4002, that makes quite a few changes in the House bill. So some notable ones would be the definition of employees to make sure that it does not include independent contractors that you would hire at work or in your home. So someone like a babysitter, for example, or maybe a seasonal employee that has 25 hours or less in a work week. It also allows, which is pretty significant, it also allows for the front loading now of 72 hours of earned sick time. And it defines small businesses as employers with 50 people or less that work for them. So that is a fairly significant change from how the current statute reads. There's also some very notable changes on the Senate side as well. What I would say is that the House version that just passed out of the House this past Thursday is a lot more robust in terms of changes made to the existing law. The Senate takes a little bit more of a minimalist approach, but the Senate has yet to take those bills up. So in terms of where we're at in the legislative process right now, the House bills have been transmitted over to the Senate. They have yet to be referred to a specific committee, though we expect them to go to the Senate Labor Committee. That committee is scheduled to meet this week, but it is not expected to take these bills up just yet. They are actually planning to meet on the 9 bills that have yet to be presented to the governor from the last session. So it's kind of a little bit of a waiting stage at this point. Some significant progress on the House side, at least, getting those bills over to the Senate, but the Senate has yet to indicate when they might bring that up for discussion.
All right, so we're in a holding pattern on that one. Thank you, Dave, for that update. So let's get into committee assignments in the legislature. We just started a new term. Then let's talk about it. Why are committee assignments so critical to the legislative process, and what changes have we seen recently that could impact our members in municipalities?
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of change over in the Senate yet, just because, you know, they're in a new term, but they're in a 4-year cycle versus a 2-year cycle like the House. So the majority committees are staying the same. They will be juggling a few people over there in the absence of having one of the seats vacated by now Congresswoman McDonald Ribbit. So we'll see at some point a special election coming up. But over in the House, you know, there have been 18 committees named, and the one special committee that took up the bills and issue Dave was just talking about. The speaker this time is really slowly rolling out who kind of the chairs of those committees are. So far, we have seen Rep. Bolin be chair of Approps, as well as Rep. DeBoyer, chair of Oversight, and then Rep. Leitner on House Judiciary. Those have been rolled out so far. And the significance of knowing, you know, who chairs and who's on the committees is when it comes to local government issues and who we're going to meet with about different issues, we look at who's on what committee that those issues will possibly take up. And so it's really hard to get rolling on some of that, not knowing who may be sitting on those committees. So as we do our new meet and greets, you know, we'll do our overall talking about the league's priorities, who we are, the members we serve. But yeah, we're anxiously awaiting all those committees to be filled out, hoping here by, you know, we're almost at the end of the month. So in the next week or two, hopefully we'll be hearing those committee assignments come out for everyone. I will tell you though, I do know the speaker has said a number of times that really with the committees, his focus in this new session is really on accountability and transparency. So I think you'll see a lot of issues or things being taken up that focus on state departments and government overall transparency.
Interesting update, Jen. Okay. And I know you mentioned as you were talking about committees and sort of how we meet and chat with new legislators that come in on this 2-year term in the House, that we have a legislative priorities document. And I want to bring this up because it's somewhat new for us here at the League, not legislative priorities in general, but this document per se. So can you talk a little bit about what that document is and how it was developed?
Yeah, so what's different is that, I mean, we have as the state and federal affairs team, we do have legislative priorities every term, but this is the first time we've really done a public facing document instead of one we're just sharing with legislators in the administration as we're, working on issues. So these are, 8 legislative priorities for the 25-26 session or term. That doesn't mean that there are only 8 things we're working on, but these are the 8 priorities that we really think will help our members in supporting and having thriving communities. So no surprise, our number 1 priority is the establishment of a revenue sharing trust fund. That will continue to be our number 1 priority until we get that over the finish line. A couple of the other ones, and I think it was just dropped in the chat. John did a blog the end of last week on these priorities and a link to the actual document so folks can read more in depth. But addressing the interaction between Headley and Proposal A, we were really going to dive into an education format, just because this is a complicated issue. And so making sure that the folks that we're working with, legislative staff, we're all talking about it the same way. We also look at this, in the terms of housing and how do we help, say, seniors come out of their housing if they want to, because say it's too large, or they have no living space, or I know in my parents' home, the bathrooms upstairs, downstairs, not on the main living floor. And at some point, it's going to be more difficult for my parents to be up and down those stairs. And there's no bedrooms on the first floor. So looking at how we might be able to help seniors, again, who want to get out of those homes to free them up. Because right now we're seeing that many of them are unable to afford to move into downsize just because of that, escalation of property taxes because of the interaction of Headley and Proposal A. So that will continue to be an issue, the creation of a neighborhood roads fund. We talk about the governor and hear the governor talk about fixing the damn roads. But our members know she's not talking about those roads that, 98% of people pull out of their driveway onto. Many times those are local roads. And so looking at a funding for neighborhood roads to help get those roads done and fixed. And there's 4 other ones. I'm sorry, there's 5 other ones because I talked about 3, but again, we don't need to dive into each one. If members have questions, they can let us know. We're happy to answer those. And knowing, these are issues that every community faces when it comes to, if you look at high level, where we're going. And we're really just looking to, again, assist our communities to be thriving, to attract and retain talent, to have housing that's needed to move Michigan forward.
Thanks, Jen. Well, again, we've posted John's blog in the chat, and I believe a direct link to the full document on the legislative priorities. Again, not new. We've always had legislative priorities, but this is a really robust document that our team and our organization is excited to put to good use in this legislative term and into the future. So thank you. That's all we've got in terms of updates today. We'll be back in a couple of weeks for another episode of Live with the League. Before we go, though, a couple of announcements. In case you missed it, CapCon, our Capital Conference, is coming up in March. Registration is open. There are certain pieces of CapCon that sell out quickly. One in particular that I know of is the Michigan Women in Municipal Government. Their luncheon always sells out. So make sure that you are in there and registering, and we will see you in Lansing in just a few short weeks. In addition to that, if you're an elected official and you want some expanded educational offerings, our Elected Officials Academy Core and Advanced Summits are coming up in February. These are virtual. We put these on twice a year, and the benefit of this one is that you don't have to leave your home to get this education. It's a Friday night from about 5 to 9-ish, and then Saturday, like 8 to noon. But we pack a lot into those few hours to get you either some good foundational skills or some advanced skills. If you are looking for some help this season in finance and budgeting, that is what the Advanced Summit will be focusing on this year. Aside from that, thank you all for joining today. Keep an eye out for the links to the resources we discussed in the chat. And we will see you next time on Live with the League. Have a great rest of your week.